What's up, guys? My name is Matt. I'm a private pilot currently in flight school, and I'm here today to talk about the 12 things I wish I knew before I took my private pilot check ride. A little bit about me before we get started. I'm currently an instrument student that is scheduled to take my instrument check ride on March 7th. It is currently the Thursday beforehand, and if everything goes well weather-wise, then I will take my check ride next Monday. But I was going through things, studying every day, getting prepared for the check ride, and it had me thinking back when I was a private pilot going for my check ride, and there was a lot of unknown. And, I had to lean on my CFI a lot, I had to lean on others that had already taken their check rides, but I didn't really know what to do. It was a big, scary thing that all private pilots have to go through, and for me, I didn't have a whole lot of resources other than other pilots in my CFI to lean on, and I think that now I know a lot more and would feel a lot better going into the check ride because there was just such the unknown beforehand. But I want to jump right into it. It's kind of in order from knowing things to the oral to the flying part. So number one on my list here is how to study. And I think that this is probably more on myself than probably most pilots out there. I wasn't the best of students in high school. I didn't study a whole lot. I got through with decent enough grades to pass, but I never was the best of student. I was just kind of middle of the pack, and I didn't really learn how to study. So after high school, I went and got a 4-year degree in something unrelated than aviation. It was actually in public relations. And that, when I was in college, really kind of forced me to learn how to study. And when I went on to flight school, that became even more so. And I found that it's different for everybody. Everybody can do different things. Some people can read a book and read the FAR aim and just take in the information that way. I'm not one of those people. I have to go over it multiple times in order for it to stick. So what I would recommend doing is reading the FAR aim, going through there, ask your CFI, ask others what is the important information to tab out, and to go in and read through the weeks coming up to your check ride. I would also go on YouTube, where I'm going to be posting this, and watch other pilots, see what they did to get through. And I think that that will help out a lot. And just, if you don't have a ground school, they have so many ground schools online that get you prepared for these tests, and that's what they're there for, and it's a $500 test, and we're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on flight school. So buying an online ground school, even if you've already done one through your flight school, to go through, especially in the weeks leading up to your check ride, and going through some of the stuff that you think that you're weak on. I mean, if it's, even if it's $200 for an online ground school, it's going to pay off in the end. We're paying so much money that everything is worth it, and you don't want to have failed check rides on your resume. So going back to it, just learn how to study. If that's flashcards, if that's what I do, is I'll take the information I think that is really important, that is 100% going to be asked, especially for going into my instrument, and I have that down on a document. And I'll have my girlfriend, my dad is a retired commercial pilot, they will quiz me, and we'll go through the entire thing. And when I'm alone, studying out at the library, I will read the question, and I will write it down on a notebook. And it takes a long time to go through all these questions, but I write it down on the notebook so I can go through and know the information. And that's the way that I do it. But I don't want to spend too long on this. Going into more of the nitty-gritty stuff that you'll be asked on your oral. Number two, I have weather. Weather, I don't know why. Even going into my instrument stage checks, I kind of overlooked this. I really wanted to focus on all the stuff that I really thought I needed to know. And weather was just kind of like, weather, like, yeah, I kind of know that. I know what a segment and an airman is. I know, I think I know the difference between a cold and a warm front. I think I know the differences between all the icing. Well, ask yourself, do you really know that stuff? Or do you think that you do? Because you'd be surprised when you get asked some of these questions about weather that if you don't go over it too much, that you just don't know, or you don't know the right answer. So for me, I really had to make weather a big emphasis, and on my private pilot check ride during the oral portion, I was grilled on it. I mean, he spent a lot of time and made sure that I knew everything about weather. It is very important in aviation. I don't know how myself I kind of overlooked it, but I don't want any of you to overlook it. That is number one that I think that you should really spend a lot of time on. Even if you think that you're confident in it, go back through it and get yourself ready to be able to answer a lot of questions on weather, because they will. I guarantee you that they will come up on the check ride. Number three, I have theory of flight. This was another area I was weak on. But what I mean by theory of flight, what the angle of attack means, what the center of gravity means, what the different types of drag are and what they do to your airplane, what happens during ground effect. And then, another one is, what is the different controls of the aircraft, the yaw, pitch, roll, what those three things mean. I was weak on this. I really was. I don't know. That information really didn't stick well with me. And really, even during instrument, getting ready for this, I had to go back and really get myself prepared if they go back into the grab bag and kind of ask me some of those questions. So I would say the theory of flight, that stuff, as private pilot students, you really want to just jump in the airplane and you think that, you're Top Gun and, you just want to fly. The information that goes along with it doesn't matter as much, but no, it matters, especially on a check ride when you're going to be asked about this stuff. I had a CFI once tell me, he said, Matt, you can fly this airplane, but he said, that's only about 15% of it. The rest of it is book knowledge. And once you realize that 80% of this, 85% of this is your knowledge, then you're going to be a better pilot. But I didn't realize that yet. I really didn't realize that until I got into instrument and things got a lot harder. But theory of flight, that's what I'd say number two is just make sure you brush up on that stuff and know it stone cold. Number four, airspace. This was something I didn't really struggle with, but I know that he really went into a lot of. So just know the width and height of your airspace, what is required to enter the airspace, know the different types of airspace. I fly out of Indiana, and we fly out of Class Delta airspace, so I'm really familiar with the protocol to enter and exit Class Delta, and we have a Charlie, Indianapolis out of us, so I've gone in and out of there a few times. So just know the differences and what an uncontrolled tower is and what airspace that is. What is the height of Class Alpha, just stuff like that. Just make sure that you know kind of what the upside down cake looks like, especially with like Bravo airspace, because you'll be asked that. A lot of flight schools are underneath the shelf of a Bravo in bigger cities. So especially for you guys flying out of those, that you'll know it a lot better than I would flying out of a Delta. But just make sure that you know what the shelf limits are, what it takes to fly into a Bravo, into a Charlie, into a Delta. So just make sure that you know that, because I was asked a lot about that on my private pilot check ride. And then number five, I guess that this, I never really was told, I guess it should have been more assumed, is that a lot of the questions are scenario based. So they won't just ask you directly, the stuff that you've been rote memorizing. I wrote down an example. I think that really happened to me during mine is, if we don't have a tachometer working, can we go fly? And the answer would be no. I know a lot of you go on 8 tomato flames. That is your minimum equipment list for VFR day. And tachometer is number 2 on that list. So you go through your head and say, altimeter, tachometer. Oh, no, I can't fly. Another way to answer that question is, is it in your minimum equipment list? That is one of the FARs, and it is. It's a required equipment for VFR day, so you would not be able to fly. So just be prepared that he's not just going to be like, what is 8 tomato flames? Just tell me what that is. He's not gonna ask you that. So make sure that you know the information, number one, but number two, that you can apply it to the question that he's going to give you, because a lot of them are scenario based. You've memorized stuff, but you don't necessarily know how he's going to ask it, and that was a big thing for me. I thought that I had this stuff memorized, and he was asking me different things, so that was something that I struggled with, and I wish I knew going into my check ride. Going on through the list, number 6. What are your limitations as a student pilot and as a private pilot? What can you do as a student pilot? Well, you can't fly with passengers, especially, when you're on solo. Private pilot, you got to go know what you can and can't do. Can fly for charity, non-for-profit. You can act as an aircraft salesman over 200 hours, but basically what you're looking at is you can't fly for hire for compensation in most circumstances, but you can fly with passengers. So that is your limitation as a private pilot. That's just a brief description of that. And then what are the documents that are required for not only yourself but the airplane? ADH is a good one that I used for the documents for the aircraft. And then, just the stuff that you need as a pilot, that shouldn't be overlooked. And especially for instrument, that is stuff that we have to know as well. So don't take your check ride and just forget all that information. It's all important. Number 7, what are the different types of airspeed and altitude? So this was another one that was just kind of nitty-gritty stuff. So just make sure that you go and look at, indicated airspeed, true airspeed, ground speed. What are the differences between those? How do you calculate ground speed? What is that? He's going to ask you that stuff. And, you don't have to be perfect on this test, but you've got to know a little bit of everything. That is what I tell private pilot students. And I'm no CFI, so I'm not authorized to be teaching this stuff, but this is just my experience. You got to know a lot of everything. You don't have to know everything, but know a lot of everything. So know your different types of airspeed, know your different types of altitude. You're going to be asked, what is density altitude, and is pressure altitude corrected for non-standard temperature? Got that. I will remember that for the rest of my life. And he did ask me that. He asked me, what is density altitude? And luckily, he didn't elaborate and say, what does that really mean? Because I wouldn't have known. And I just spitted out the textbook definition, and he moved on. So thank God for that. But you're going to be asked stuff like that, so just make sure that you can go through and ask that. Number 8 on my list of 12, what type of engine do you have? And how does a carburetor work, etc. Just knowing stuff about how the aircraft works, how the pedostatic system works. That's huge in instrument. Knowing how your instruments get their information. Knowing how the engine works. If you guys, worked on cars and stuff growing up, then that will put you at an advantage. But just know that kind of stuff. Know what the carburetor does. When you put in carb heat, if your airplane has that, what does that do exactly? Because if you have an airplane with carb heat, he's going to ask you that stuff, and you're expected to know, and just not be able to just use carb heat. You have to know why it's working inside your airplane. And I have a nice little acronym that I use when they ask about the type of engine. And I fly a Cessna 172. It's a Lycoming engine. The acronym is 4-hand, and it's 4 cylinders, horizontally opposed, air-cooled, naturally aspirated, and direct-driven. So that just explains everything that the Lycoming engine in my Cessna 172 is. It's 4 cylinders, horizontally opposed, is air-cooled. That's how it cools itself, and the rest of it. It's the best way concisely to tell what your airplane does, and you're gonna have to dig more deeper into that, and that stuff is not necessarily fun to learn, but you're gonna be asked. Believe me, I was. Moving into more of the flight stuff, there's a lot of stuff that can be asked on the oral, but moving into more of the flight stuff, number 1, if it was right on my run-up, he was asking me this. know how to work your GPS. You may think that you can just do direct to an airport and that would be good enough, like I did. But no, you got to know how to do it. Ask your CFI to just give you a crash course on everything you're going to expect from your GPS and how to maneuver and how to navigate it. When we're on our run up, the message, we have a KLN 94. It's a horrible, outdated GPS that I can't wait to never use again. But the little message icon popped up in I think it's the bottom left-hand corner, and he asked me, "What is that?" And it makes me a bad pilot, I guess, but I'd never seen it before. I never noticed it, and I'm like, I don't know. And on your run up during your check ride with the FAA DP in the right seat of your airplane, that is not what you want to do. So he basically showed me, he was not very happy with that, but he showed me that it was a message and you set your course on your CDI to whatever degree that it wanted. So if it says set course to 341, you tune your CDI to 341 to match that, and that's just your course that you most likely be flying. So just know that stuff. Just know, especially for instrument, that it gets way harder. So I'm not going to go into that, but just know how to work your GPS. Just really know how to work it, because if something happens funky with it that you've never seen before, you're going to have to deal with it, and the DP is going to want to see that you're in control of the airplane. Number 10, and I got into trouble with this. How to track a VOR. Okay, so we took off after the message thing, and I was tracking GPS. I was doing my cross-country flight. I had my ForeFlight in my hand. I was looking out to see the waypoints in the sky visually, and he then reaches down, turns off my GPS. And he says, "Oh, GPS went out. I want us to go to Louisville. How can we go to Louisville?" Well, there's multiple ways you can do it. First thing that popped into my head, and track VOR. Okay. All right, so do it. All right, so I take out my ForeFlight, scroll down to Louisville. I got the identifier code to tune in, so I can track it. So I type it in, I'm twisting the CDI, nothing's happening, and I'm freaking out. Why is nothing working? Well, this is more for instrument stuff, but it can, I guess, be asked on your private pilot check ride. I was in GPS mode, not nav mode. And so I was so flustered that I did everything right, but I was in GPS and not nav mode. Luckily, he didn't fail me for that, but it happened, and he kind of let me know, "Hey, dumbass, you're in GPS mode, not nav mode." So make sure you know how to track a VOR. It could come up. I know guys that didn't have to do it, but it happened to me. So number 10, or number 11, actually, relax. Don't white knuckle the airplane. Relax, trim out the airplane, and fly. And you will do the best once you do that. Once you get over the nerves of, oh my gosh, I've just spent $500, $600 on this check ride, the FAA's in the right seat, he's looking over everything I'm doing, just relax. You will not make good decisions. You will not properly fly the airplane. You won't keep on your altitude. You won't keep on your headings if you're white knuckling it and you're freaking out. Just relax. And I had to tell myself to do that a lot during my check ride. But someone that's done it, relaxed. You're going to be okay. If you do the stuff, if you study, if you've done things correctly with your CFI, everything will be okay. And that kind of goes along with number 12, and my last point, is be confident and not arrogant. Let the DPE talk to you. Don't think that you are Mr. Top Gun. Don't think that you're Mr. Know-It-All, because you're not. You're most likely 45, 50-hour pilot that thinks that he's, done everything because he's soloed an airplane, and wow, your friends and family think you're so cool. You're in flight school. You don't know anything. And just know that. but be confident in yourself, because if you're not confident, then you're not going to be a good pilot. But don't be arrogant. You're nothing in the grand scheme of things. He's more than likely 10,000 hour pilot that is doing this. It could be 20,000 hour pilot. It's doing this as a retirement job. Don't act arrogant, because if he sees that you're arrogant, then he's going to grill you harder, and you don't want to do that. The bonus I had here kind of goes along with that, is don't say too much with your answers. Is just be concise. Just say enough to answer the question, and don't act like a know-it-all. Because if you're like, oh my gosh, this, and this, when he's asking you about what density altitude is, and you're going on, oh, this is what true airspeed is, and don't do that, because if you do, he's going to dig into that question. The one thing that you don't want to hear on a check ride is, since you brought that up, you better know your stuff, because if you don't, he's going to dig into another box of worms that he maybe didn't even want to ask you. So your goal in the check ride, especially during the oral, is to make it as short as possible. So why would you want to keep going with your answers and act like a know-it-all? It's just going to prolong it. And the VP doesn't want to prolong it. They're busy guys. So just don't do that. But that's all I really got to say as far as going into your private pilot check ride. This has already gone on for 21 minutes, and I kind of want to make it quick. But I just hope that somebody out there can see this video before their private pilot check ride. Maybe they're in the middle of it, and it can help them with how to study and what to expect, because I really didn't have it. There are other YouTubers that kind of go through what to expect, but not a lot for private pilot. And it all helps, and especially going again into my instrument had me really thinking back to when I got my private pilot certificate, and how scared I was, and what it meant when I really got it. So just relax, study right, listen to your CFI. I'm just here to give kind of branch advice about what I went through. Listen to your CFI. Do what he tells you. Listen to other students in your flight school and what they went through if they're ahead of you. Study with others, and do whatever you can to study that is best for you. Hope you guys have a good one, and safe travels to all of you flying. Thanks.